Hey mathematicians, it's Justin again. Today's our last day studying outer space in science club, so I'm reading this cool article online. The Hubble Space Telescope's orbit around Earth covers a distance of approximately 2.7 times 10 to the fourth miles. Since its launch, it has orbited Earth 1.8 times 10 to the fifth times. I wonder how many miles it's traveled in total. Think we could figure it out? Hubble's orbit is 2.7 times 10 to the fourth miles, and it's orbited Earth 1.8 times 10 to the fifth times. What math operation will tell us the total distance here? Multiplication. We'll multiply 2.7 times 10 to the fourth by 1.8 times 10 to the fifth. To simplify, it's really just four numbers multiplied together. And since multiplication can be done in any order, we can just rearrange them, grouping the coefficients, then the powers of 10. 2.7 times 1.8 is 4.86. Then, how do we multiply 10 to the fourth and 10 to the fifth? They're exponential expressions with the same base, so we can use the product property of exponents. Keep the base the same, 10, and then just add the exponents. 4 plus 5 is 9, so this is 10 to the ninth. The Hubble Space Telescope has traveled 4.86 times 10 to the ninth miles. Here's another problem, evaluating 4 times 10 to the sixth times 5 times 10 to the eighth, asking us to write our answer in scientific notation. How should we regroup these factors? We group the coefficients, then the powers of 10. Multiplying 4 by 5 is 20. How do we multiply 10 to the sixth and 10 to the eighth? By adding their exponents. That makes 10 to the 14th. But hold on, is 20 times 10 to the 14th in scientific notation? It looks like scientific notation, but the coefficient is too big. In scientific notation, the coefficient must be greater than or equal to 1, but less than 10. How do you think we can fix this? Well, 20 is 2 times 10. 2 is between 1 and 10, so that makes our new coefficient. Now we have 2 times 10 times 10 to the 14th. We just need to multiply 10 by 10 to the 14th by adding the exponents. 10 has an exponent of 1, and 1 plus 14 gives us a new exponent of 15. The answer is 2 times 10 to the 15th. So, to multiply numbers in scientific notation, multiply the coefficients, then add the exponents according to the product property. And finally, make sure the answer is in scientific notation. If not, just move a 10 from the coefficient to the power of 10. I think you're ready to try some on your own. Pause the video here to evaluate these expressions. Be sure to answer in scientific notation. Starting with part A, we begin by grouping the coefficients. Negative 4 times 2 is negative 8, since a negative times a positive is a negative. Then, grouping the powers of 10, we multiply them by adding 8 and 2 for a new exponent of 10. That's negative 8 times 10 to the 10th, which is already in scientific notation. For part B, group the coefficients, then the powers of 10. 6 times 5 is 30, and 10 to the 4th times 10 to the 7th is 10 to the 11th. Is 30 times 10 to the 11th in scientific notation, though? Not quite. 30 is too big, so we break it into 3 times 10. Then multiply 10 by 10 to the 11th, giving us 10 to the 12th. So in scientific notation, it's 3 times 10 to the 12th. Nice work multiplying numbers in scientific notation. This next part of the article is about how far away different objects in our solar system are. Mars is about 1.4 times 10 to the 8th miles away from Earth. The moon is about 2.4 times 10 to the 5th miles away from Earth. Those are some pretty big distances. So Mars is definitely farther away. Its distance has a larger exponent, and I've seen the moon before. But how many times farther is Mars than the moon? To know how many times farther Mars is, we'll need to divide the distance to Mars by the distance to the moon. So let's evaluate 1.4 times 10 to the 8th divided by 2.4 times 10 to the 5th. I'll write the division in fraction form. We can break this expression into two parts, just like when we multiplied. First, divide the coefficients, 1.4 over 2.4. Then divide the powers of 10, 10 to the 8th over 10 to the 5th. These two fractions are multiplied since scientific notation is written as a coefficient times a power of 10. Dividing the coefficients, we get about 58 hundredths, rounded to the nearest hundredth. How do we divide the powers of 10? They're exponents with the same base, and that calls for the quotient property of exponents. The base stays 10, and we subtract the exponents. 8 minus 5 is 3, so that's 10 cubed. Is 0.58 times 10 cubed in scientific notation? No, the coefficient is too small. To adjust, we can remove a 10 from the power of 10. That'll decrease the exponent by 1, giving us 10 squared. We'll multiply that 10 by the coefficient, and 0.58 times 10 is 5.8. So Mars is 5.8 times 10 squared, or 580, times farther from Earth than the moon is from Earth. Here's another problem, evaluating 1 times 10 to the negative 8th divided by 2 times 10 to the negative 3rd. And of course, we always write our answer in scientific notation. We could rewrite this as a fraction, but let's try working with it as it is. We can still break this into two parts, 1 divided by 2 times 10 to the negative 8th divided by 10 to the negative 3rd. Dividing the coefficients gives us 0.5. How do we divide the powers of 10? By subtracting the exponents. Negative 8 minus negative 3 is negative 5. Is 5/10 times 10 to the negative 5th in scientific notation? Nope, the coefficient is less than 1, so how do we rewrite it? We'll move a 10 to the coefficient. To take a 10 away from 10 to the negative 5th, though, we subtract 1 from negative 5, giving us 10 to the negative 6th. For the coefficient, 0.5 times 10 is 5, and that makes 5 times 10 to the negative 6th. So, to divide numbers in scientific notation, divide the coefficients, then subtract the exponents according to the quotient property, and of course, make sure the answer is in scientific notation. If not, take a 10 from the power of 10. All right, we've got time for one more example. Pause the video here to evaluate these expressions, expressing your answers in scientific notation. For part A, divide the coefficients. Negative 6 divided by 3 is negative 2. Then divide the powers of 10 by subtracting the exponents. Negative 5 minus negative 2 is negative 3. That gives us negative 2 times 10 to the negative 3rd, which is already in scientific notation. For part B, dividing the coefficients, 2 by 8, gives us 25 hundredths. Next, divide the powers of 10 by subtracting the exponents. 10 minus 4 is 6. 0.25 times 10 to the 6th isn't in scientific notation, though, because the coefficient is too small. So how do we adjust it to be in scientific notation? We'll move a 10 to the coefficient, decreasing the exponent by 1 to get 10 to the 5th. 0.25 times 10 is 2.5. That gives us a final answer of 2.5 times 10 to the 5th. Thanks for multiplying and dividing in scientific notation with me to explore outer space today. Remember, we can always regroup the numbers, pairing up the coefficients, then the exponents. To multiply or divide the powers of 10, use the exponent properties we've learned. And when you're done, always check that your answer is in scientific notation. Be sure to finish up your guided notes and complete practice levels 1 through 3. Until next time, keep questioning, keep calculating, and remember, scientific notation is your ticket to outer space. See you next time.
Hey!